What can I say? What are you sowing? What are you sowing right now? The seeds that you sow that you know will grow up and produce fruit later on. The Bible is very clear over and over and over again that what we sow is what we will reap. The things that we're sowing now are the things that will be reaped later on. Everything that we sow is going to reap a harvest later on. It's kind of an overwhelming thought if we really think about that. But if we chunk it down and kind of piece it together piece by piece, I think it makes sense and it can become exciting. And if we have a bigger vision, if we know what the goal is, we know what types of seeds we ought to be planting. I showed this picture here, one, because it's pretty and it has a pretty heart, but because it also shows design. This is somebody or some people who put a lot of thought into this, and they didn't just pray for this pretty thing to appear out of the sky. They actually put work into it, and they planned it. And they sowed seeds accordingly, and they shaped it, and they nurtured it, and they cared for it. And I think about the intentionality of the early church, of God's people. And I look at today, and I think sometimes we are so fueled and driven by immediate results and immediate success that we get discouraged really quickly. And we see these cycles of peaks and valleys. I think like we've not seen even 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And in today's world, we have these major peaks and valleys, these ultra highs and ultra lows. And if you look around at other Christians and just kind of observe what's going on with Christians, the one thing that I hear a lot is people who just say, well, we're just shopping around. We're looking for the right church, for the right fit. And I think in my mind, and this may or may not be the case, but in my mind I'm thinking, okay, some people are just looking for something that's like this big holy grail of Christianity. And they may or may not find it. Probably they won't. And then I look at other churches, other Christians that just know how to work and to plan and to plant seeds and to be patient and to let God do his work. And I think the former group prays for the big miracles and they get disappointed when God doesn't deliver, right? God, just make our church grow. God, give us the right people to bump into out on the street today that we can share Jesus with. See, we pray for these miracles to happen without planting seeds. And I think the Bible is pretty clear that in order to reap a harvest, we need to be planting seeds, but Paul tells us to be careful what kinds of seeds that we plant. Contrast this, the landscape that you see right now, with this. Clearly one is well planned out. It's thought of, it's thought through. They know what the end goal is. They know what they wanted to create. They included a lot of art in this. A lot of planning went into one, and one is just kind of haphazard. And I look at the second as the church, the Christians who just pray and say, God, make big things happen. Well, God doesn't work this way. Usually, almost never. God expects his people to work. He expects his people to plant seeds, and he expects there to be a harvest of righteousness. I was down in Dallas this last week, and I was at a mega church. It was a church of about 6,000 people, and I was sharing with some of our leaders this morning when we were down having coffee. I said, I sometimes I harp on big mega churches because their goal is just to grow. Just give us growth. And they'll do anything to make that grow. And I said, what I experienced with this church really impressed me, because here was a church who focused on discipling people, on getting people to be seed planters, on getting people to know what the big picture is, what the end goal is, what the kingdom goal is. And so they disciple people. And one of the things that some of their ministers told me when I was there is, when people come in, we tell them right off the bat that we expect them to give. We expect them to give of their time. We expect them to give of their money. And we do that together. We do it as a community. We do it as a church. And I thought that was really cool. And they tell their people that they expect 1 hour of volunteer time a week per people. Now, if you imagine a church of about 6,000 people, that's 6,000 hours that are being given every single week to better the kingdom. And it's not just like, flipping light switches and things like that. They're actually going out into the community and they're doing things for other people. And they're sharing the word with other people. And they're praying for other people. And so when they volunteer an hour of time, they're being actively involved in planting seeds. I'm going to go back and reread this, and then I'm going to jump to Proverbs 22, because I think it's just, it ties in together really nicely. But first of all, to back up a little bit, in Galatians 6, Paul says that we're supposed to bear one another's burdens, that we're supposed to help each other out, that we're supposed to bear the load of burdens and pain and sorrow and sin and all these different things. Paul says we bear each other's burdens, but in verse 4, let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor. For each one will have to bear his own load. In other words, help bear each other's burdens, but in the end, know what you are responsible for. Don't rely on your neighbor and don't say, well, I'm just going to kind of tag along and do what he does or what she does. Paul says, in the end, let your own work stand on its own. In other words, when you're planting seeds, know what seeds you're planting, and don't just rely on the person in front of you who's scattering seeds and be like, well, I'll just kind of tag along. Paul says, know what you're responsible for. Bear your own load. And then verse 6, picking up where we did this morning. Let the one who is taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. And let us not grow weary of doing good. For in due season, we will reap if we do not give up. I think this is what's really important. And you think, okay, Paul, why are you telling us don't grow weary in doing good? And I look at this and I look around and I see so many Christians who are just giving up. They're just thrown in the towel and they get tired of doing good. Or they volunteer for something and they make it like 3 months and then they just say, well, I'm just burned out. I think part of the reason why they're burning out is because they don't have the end goal. They don't know what it is. And so they get busy. They busy themselves in just volunteering and giving time, and they don't know why they're doing it. And eventually they don't see the benefits of that, and so they just give up. Say, well, it's not working. Or I'm just tired, or I'm burned out. Paul says, don't grow weary in doing good. If you're doing good for others, keep doing it. And you may not see the harvest immediately, but you will see it. For in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. Again, I looked to this church that I visited this past week, and I thought it's so cool because they're living this out. They work together. They encourage each other. They're sowing seeds. And I was telling the class this morning, one of the cool things that they do a mission day. where they just go out and they talk to their city and they say, give us all the code violations that are going on right now. List every property that has code violations. And they get that list. The city gives them a list, and then they plan. And they say, okay, how are we going to fix these code violations? And they said, on that one day, we have like 5,000 people who go out. Men, women, children. They descend on the city, and they just hit all these properties that have the code violations. And they say, we do things like put up fences. We build fences for people. We build porches. We put roofs on houses. We paint properties. We cut grass that's been overgrown. For one day, we go out and we fix as many of these code violations as we can, and we get our city back up to snuff. And they said, it's not just about keeping people busy and going and fixing up properties, but when we go out, we meet people and we make relationships. And people thank us, and they want to know where we're from. And I thought this was really cool, too. They wear shirts. They all have these red shirts, and I forget what it says on it, but they don't list the church's name. They're like, because it's not about our church. It's not about our congregation. It's about blessing people. And we don't want to draw attention that, we're the church out there doing this in our city. They're like, our goal is to plant seeds and to bless people. And then God will do the rest. And they're reaping a harvest right now that's really cool. If you have your Bibles, turn to Proverbs 22. Proverbs 22. And we'll start verse 4. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the crooked. Whoever guards his soul will keep far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. Whoever sows injustice will reap calamity, and the rod of his fury will fail. Whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. Drive out a scoffer, and strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. The eyes of the Lord keep watch over knowledge, but he overthrows the word of the traitor. And I like this verse. The sluggard says, there's a lion outside. I shall be killed in the streets. I like that verse because it's the guy who's like, he's like, yeah, there's a lion out there. Probably going to eat me and kill me. Like, instead of getting up and killing the lion or chasing it away, they're just like, I'm doomed. I love that verse because it's funny. But there's so much packed into this, right? Train up a child on the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. What's he talking about? He's talking about sowing seeds. He's talking about doing the right things now. He's talking about showing your child how to be a seed planter. He's talking about showing your child how to bless people. The rich rules over the poor. The borrower is the slave of the lender. Whoever sows injustice will reap calamity. If you're sowing injustices, if you're going around and you're being selfish and you're sowing all these things that are creating injustices, guess what you're going to reap? Right? You reap calamity. It's exactly what Paul's talking about. Be careful what you sow, because what you sow you will reap. Don't grow weary of doing good, because in the end you're going to reap a harvest that's bountiful, and it's a harvest of righteousness. Verse 9, whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. About sharing. There's so much in the Bible about sharing what we have. And if we're stingy with our money, if we're greedy, if we don't help people who are poor, if we don't freely and liberally give our money to other people, to poor people, if we don't lend to the poor, guess what we're not going to reap? We won't reap a harvest of righteousness. These are powerful, powerful verses. And so my question is, where does that leave us? How does this apply to us? Where does this leave us, the Somerset Church of Christ? I think on the greatly encouraging side that we have an incredible opportunity. I hope that everybody knows this. If you don't know it, you're going to know it. Now, we have Narcotics Anonymous meets here once a week. They just started their Tex, you said they're in their 6th week now? Okay, so this is a recent thing. We have on Saturdays now about, what is it, about 30 people right now? Okay, so we have like 20. I think the one week Bob said it was close to 30, but we have 20 some people every week here who are desperate, who are searching. Those are seeds that are being planted. And you say, well, where are they on Sunday? Where are they now? Paul says, don't grow weary in doing good, but be patient. Be patient, and you will reap a harvest. We have other things that are going on. We have our trip to Ecuador that's coming up. I just had an online meeting with Rusty and Laura, and we were making plans for our group whenever we're going to be there in a few weeks. And it kind of blows my mind because, you know, they keep talking about the impact that this congregation has had on their work in Ecuador. And I think some of us don't realize that, you know, this big harvest is taking place right now because of you guys. And Rusty told me recently, he's like, you guys are the one congregation who regularly reaches out to us and encourages us. You guys cheer us on. You guys tell us that we're valuable, that we're worthy, that our work is important. And he's like, we need that. We have other things that are going on. I look back over the years too. This month actually makes 10 years that I've been here. Can't believe that, but this is 10 years. And sometimes you forget the things that we've done as a congregation. And I was just going back looking through pictures. And the things that we've done as a congregation, the people we've blessed, the amount of people is incredible. It's impressive. That's not to brag, but it's to give us hope, to say we've been planting seeds slowly for at least 10 years. And there's a harvest that's being readied. That's encouraging. Roxanne shared with us a couple weeks ago about the impact that her cards and presents are making at the aid home. Those are seeds that are being planted. Natalie's been working very hard on the VBS that we're going to be doing for the next several weeks. Those are seeds that are being planted. Don't let that fall by the wayside. Encourage your kids to invite their friends. Don't just say, well, isn't that nice? That's nice for us. Invite your friends. Have your kids invite their friends to that. There's a lot of work going into that. It's not just Natalie. We have lots of volunteers here who are quietly logging hours and hours of their time to make this happen. That's cool. That's encouraging. There's so many different things that are going on right now, and I just want to encourage you guys to keep planting seeds, but know what the end goal is. Know what the end goal is, and let's all work together so that we can have something that looks like this and not something that looks like this. If there's anybody this morning who has any prayer needs or anybody who has not yet taken that step to put Christ on in baptism, we would encourage you to come up, or our shepherds will be in the back as we all stand and sing together.